We're supposed to help people.
We're supposed to help our people! Starting with our stockholders, Bob. Who's helping them out, huh? You know, Bob, a company
It's like an enormous clock.
is like an enormous Yes, precisely. It only works if all the little cogs mesh together. Now, a clock needs to be clean, well lubricated, and wound tight.
You are not a clock, so start living like it. Someone once told me conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. Growing up, The Incredibles was one of my favorite movies. I mean, what child wouldn't be fascinated with the world of a superhero society? But recently coming back to the movie, I realized it was a lot darker than I remembered. Of course, some people can relate that Syndrome is the main villain, yet I can argue there was another one. Let me explain. I think the real villain here is society. And if we look deeper into society, the real answer is conformity. So, what is conformity? Conformity in society is when people change their behavior or beliefs to fit in with the group. For example, dressing in business attire for a corporate job interview reflects conformity to professional expectations. It can also be as bad as your friends peer pressuring you to do certain drugs. When you give in to the expectations not of your own, that is called being conformed. I want you to pay attention to the intro interviews of The Incredibles.
No matter how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. I mean, sometimes I just want it to stay saved, for a little bit. I feel like the maid. I just cleaned up this mess. Can we keep it clean for 10 minutes?
You get to that.
Sometimes I think I just like the simple life, relax a little and raise a family.
Settle down, are you kidding? I'm at the top of my game. I'm right up there with the big dogs. Girls, come on. Leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so.
If you watch The Incredibles, you know this is far from truth over time. Helen, aka Elastigirl, thinks it's time to move on from the past and just focus on their family dynamic. Bob, on the other end, is out here trying to relive the glory days, but you have to ask yourself, why is it like this in the first place now? Mr. Incredible saved the dude that was trying to take his own life. This was soonly interrupted when Bon Voyage was near. A younger version of Syndrome appears and tries to get Mr. Incredible, but gets a bomb attached to his cape. Mr. Incredible, being the hero he is, goes after Buddy to try to save him. Bomb goes off and accidentally blows up a part of a train track. Now it's up to Mr. Incredible to use his strength to try to stop the incoming train. Of course he saves the day, but the aftermath was a little unexpected.
In a stunning turn of events, a superhero is being sued for saving someone who apparently didn't want to be saved. The plaintiff, Oliver Sansweet, who was foiled in his attempted suicide by Mr. Incredible, has filed suit against the famed superhero in Superior Court.
Mr. Sansweet didn't ask to be saved. Mr. Sansweet didn't want to be saved. And the injury received from Mr. Incredible's actions, so-called, causes him daily pain.
Hey, I saved your life!
You didn't save my life, you ruined my death. That's what you did.
Listen,
My client has no
little
further
piece.
comment at this.
The aftermath of this event sparked the anti-superhero era. Apparently, superheroes are harming people more than they're doing good, and is costing taxpayers millions of dollars. For an early 2000s Pixar movie, the contact matter is actually pretty heavy. In society, the biggest weapon of conformity is the law. Some laws are very good and need to be in place, while others can be biased and wrong. We have people who are set in place to enforce these laws, and if you don't follow them, you will be punished. Mr. Incredible saves a man from suicide and is scrutinized and sued. It highlights how societal norms can sometimes punish individuals for doing the right thing, especially if it goes against established expectations and rules. Fast forward 15 years later, we see Mr. Incredible working a dead-end office job that is generally sucking the life out of him. For the writers to have Mr. Incredible at the highest levels of fame and notoriety, to now working a boring office job, gives a really good perspective on how dull your life can actually get. I think the ironic thing about this scene is that it goes against Mr. Incredible's moral code. He's known for saving and helping people. There's no way he could scam an old lady out of insurance. Even if it's against company policy, he still strives to do the right thing.
You authorized payment on the Walker policy?
Someone broke into their house, Mr. Huff. Their policy clearly covers him against
I don't want to know
any
about their
litigation.
coverage, Bob. Don't tell me about their coverage. Tell me how you're keeping Insuracare in the black. Tell me how that's possible with you writing checks to every Harry Hardluck and Sally sob story that gives you a phone call.
Like it or not, money is the second biggest tool to conform someone. We all know the saying, money makes the world go round. And this is one of the truest statements that can ever be said. Some of the laws and policies in the real world are all structured about profits. And you, my friend, live in a society where you need it to survive. You see, the boss can treat Mr. Incredible however he wants because at the end of the day, he writes his check. Throw in that Bob has a family and more expenses that he has to take care of, Bob has a little ethical dilemma on his hand, and this is something a lot of people face. Are you willing to step over the next person to gain financial prowess? We get a sad little reality shot of what it looks like for a lot of people. Bob is in a tiny car at a job he doesn't like, and his life is going down a hill. A couple seconds later, we find out that Dash is getting in trouble at school for doing harmless pranks with his powers. Dash is only acting out because he wants to play sports, and his mom won't allow him because he has powers. This leads to a common theme in conversation that's later brought into the movie.
You always say, do your best, but you don't really mean it. Why can't I do the best that I can do?
Right now, honey, the world just wants us to fit in, and to fit in, we just gotta be like everybody else.
But Dad always said our powers were nothing to be ashamed of. Our powers made us special.
Everyone's special, Dash.
Which is another way of saying no one is.
If this sounds familiar in any way, it's because Syndrome basically said the same thing.
And when I'm old and I've had my fun, I'll sell my inventions so that everyone can be superheroes. Everyone can be super. And when everyone's super, no one will be.
This offers a really sad reality about society. Most of us are confined in a box. It's either you're special or you're not, or you actually are special and society tells you you're not. A good example of this is when Bob goes back to his boss' office.
A company
It's like an enormous clog.
is like an enormous Yes, precisely. It only works if all the little cogs mesh together.
You don't have to be in the clock. And if you are, make it a clock that you enjoy. Not all of us can be professional sports players or celebrities or billionaires, but everyone has something that makes them special. While listening to the boss ramble on about following in line, Bob noticed something that he can't overlook. It seems to be that the person outside is getting mugged. Bob has the choice to either help the person or potentially get fired from his boss. The person ends up getting harmed anyway, and Bob comes to the conclusion that saving people is more important than his corporate job. At this point, Mr. Incredible is extremely depressed and doesn't know how he's going to break to his family that he let them down. He's not paying attention to the things around him, and he's getting very angry about things he can't control. When Frozone arrives, Mr. Incredible's mood changes. He's excited and has a new burst of energy out of nowhere. This is because this is the only night where he can actually do what he truly wants to do, and that's saving people. When he leaves, we can finally get a glimpse of what's going on into the kids' minds.
Now, it's perfectly normal.
Normal? What do you know about normal? What does anyone in this family know about normal?
Now, wait a minute, young
we
lady.
act normal, Mom. I want to be normal. The only normal one is Jack Jack, and he's not even toilet trained.
Lucky. Oh, I meant about being normal.
I don't believe that they actually want to be normal. I think this stems from not being able to express their true selves, so now they wish they never had their powers to begin with. When Mr. Incredible gets caught for his out-night patrol, the way the argument between these two was so well put, you can feel for both sides.
Tell me you haven't been listening to the police scanner again.
Look, I performed a public service. You act like that's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing, Bob. Uprooting our family again so you can relive the glory days is a very bad thing.
Reliving the glory days is better than acting like they didn't happen.
You see, since Bob is married and has kids, he has a new way of living life. He can't just be selfish and put himself above others because that would be wrong to his family. So Helen does have a point.
I can't believe you don't want to go to your own son's graduation.
It's not a graduation. He is moving from the 4th grade to the 5th grade.
It's a ceremony.
It's psychotic. They keep creating new ways to celebrate mediocrity, but if someone is genuinely exceptional,
This is not about you, Bob. This is about Dash.
This is one of Mr. Incredible's biggest flaws. Just because he has powers and he's deemed as special to others doesn't mean he gets to determine what makes someone else special. And this is going to come back to bite him later.
You want to do something for Dash? Then let him actually compete. Let him go out for sports.
I will not be made the enemy here. You know why we can't do that.
Because it'd be great.
This is not about you.
Later, Mr. Incredible gets a secret message about a potential job. This will allow him to do what he wants to do the best, save lives and get back into action. Without hesitation, he's willing to do it, not even knowing who the money is coming from and what the boss is going to have him to do, as long as it's not the office job. After a couple of change of events, we finally get to see Mr. Incredible happy. He's going around showing affection and spending time with his kids, and everything is brighter. This is all because he finally has an outlet to be who he wants to be again. We later find out that Syndrome is behind all of these shenanigans. I wanted to wait to talk about Syndrome because him and Mr. Incredible aren't that very different. As society told Mr. Incredible that he's no longer needed and he should just try to fit in, Mr. Incredible did the opposite to Syndrome. You see, when we're first introduced to Syndrome, he's a bubbly little kid who's genuinely Mr. Incredible's biggest fan. He wants to be like him and even named himself Incrediboy. Mr. Incredible then scolds him and decides to kick him out of the car because who is this kid? The next time we see him is when Mr. Incredible is fighting Bon Voyage. Syndrome invented some rocket boots, so that's how he's able to get around so quick. Still trying to impress Mr. Incredible by showing that he doesn't need superpowers to be special, he gets this response.
Can we talk? You always say be true to yourself, but you never say which part of yourself to be true to. Well, I finally figured out who I am, and I am your ward. Incrediboy!
And now you have officially carried it too far, buddy.
Oh! This is because I don't have powers, isn't it? Well, not every superhero has powers, you know. You can be super without them. I invented these. I can fly. Can you fly?
Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
Oui, et ta tenue est complètement ridicule!
Just give me one chance. I'll show you. I'll go get the police.
Buddy, don't!
It'll only take a second, really.
No, stop!
As you know, after this was the event that caused the train to explode, leading to the downfall of superheroes, basically. This offers a very interesting perspective because Mr. Incredible is in the right here, and in no way, shape, or form am I saying he's wrong for not accepting Syndrome. What I can argue is the neglect on his intelligence. He didn't have to, but maybe a check-in on Syndrome would have prevented all of this in the future. I mean, creating rocket boots at a young age has to have some type of upside, and I also think his word choices could have been a little nicer.
Be here, made sure of that.
Incrediboy!
You're not affiliated with me! Holy smokes, I'm late.
When they interact with each other 15 years later, you can tell Syndrome has been waiting for this moment all his life.
After you trashed the last one, I had to make some major modifications. Sure, it was difficult, but you are worth it. I mean, after all, I am your biggest fan.
Buddy?
My name is not Buddy! And it's not Incrediboy either. That ship has sailed. All I wanted was to help you. I only wanted to help. And what did you say to me?
Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
You see, the results of Mr. Incredible made Syndrome realize that he isn't special. Society only views people with superpowers to be special, and his intelligence couldn't match. This is what drives him to take out all superheroes.
I'm sorry.
See? Now you respect me. Because I'm a threat. That's the way it works.
You see, this statement, "now you fear me because I'm a threat," offers a very interesting perspective. This invites a moral reflection on the nature of respect and authority. In a broader social context, this statement can critique how societies and systems awfully only respond to marginalized or oppressed groups when they become a threat, the status quo, rather than addressing their needs and rights proactively and respectfully. Who's to say if Mr. Incredible paired Syndrome up with another superhero that would have suited his abilities, he wouldn't have turned out the way he did? You see, when Mr. Incredible escaped Syndrome, he ended up coming back into the lair and discovering something he shouldn't have. You get to see a scale of all the superheroes Syndrome had wiped out. Syndrome had been using the same method that he used on Bob in order to bring him in. This shows that all the retired superheroes were dealing with the same thing Bob was going through, depressed and wanted to get back in action also. A couple minutes later, watching the Incredibles finally use their powers as a family is really wholesome, because you watch them discover things about their powers while working together that they wouldn't have found out if they were still back in the city. Of course, Syndrome had to put an end to all of this. The last stretch of the movie is really gold. Syndrome is getting ready to drop the robot into the field, and we can finally see how crazy Syndrome actually is. He's so desperate to prove to society that he's a hero and worthy of love and affection, that he's willing to fake it and doesn't care about how much damage he causes.
Hope is lost. Syndrome will save the day. I'll be a bigger hero than you ever were.
You mean you killed off real heroes so that you could pretend to be one?
Oh, I'm real. Real enough to defeat you. And I did it without your precious gifts, your oh-so-special powers.
At this point, Syndrome doesn't even need the robot to be a superhero. His intelligence and his inventions could pass as one anyways. I think the robot plan is way deeper for him. I don't know if anybody else get these vibes, but the whole battling an AI robot that learns new moves and stuff like that kind of reminds me of the current day of age we're living in now. With AI on the rise now, I can't stop to think about how many jobs are going to be displaced in the future. Society has a very funny way to show you what's in and what's out and who's not needed anymore. After they defeat the robot and they rush home to see what's going on with Jack, Syndrome is there. And if you ask me, he's about to commit one of the most diabolical acts there could be. He's willing to take Jack just so he can raise him as his own apprentice.
Oh, don't worry, I'll be a good mentor. Supportive, encouraging, everything you weren't. And in time, who knows? He might make a good sidekick.
Hypothetically speaking, if Syndrome was to successfully raise Jack, I think he would have raised him as deeming his superpowers as not special. This will probably result into Jack hating his powers and seeing it more of a burden than being beneficial. And you see, even Syndrome's death was kind of ironic because he wanted the glitz and the glamour of being a superhero, that's why he rocks a cape. And by portraying this act, he died like a lot of the superheroes with this same attribute. I can't help but to think that this is the writers foreshadowing his stupidity. I think the end of the movie did a really good job showing that the Incredibles are done hiding their powers. They are now coming into the facts of who they are, and society can't stop them. I mean, unless the government really wanted to. I want to end this video by saying life's too short to put yourself in a box. Think big and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Even if you feel like sometimes you're trapped by your environment, trust me, if you keep fighting for what you want, there's a way out. Anyways, this has been Media Munchies, and I really thank you all for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, don't forget to leave, like, subscribe, and peace.